the difference from most entrepreneurs of being successful and those that perhaps are less successful is execution and operations. It was one of those situations where I was on with the executive team, on with the finance guys, looking, could we afford to keep our employees? We had no business, no revenue was coming in. And with the rise of AI and everything else, and to anyone that's doing marketing, you have to do multiple channels and you need to be testing all of those channels to see what works. And if something is working this year, be prepared that that might switch up on you the next year. And that makes it very difficult, but it makes it more important to have a multi-channel strategy. The hardest thing about building a business is that it's just relentless. It takes over 10 years to be an overnight success, was what I like to say. And during that 10-year process, it's a relentless focus on execution and operations and details and fixing mistakes. And it is a 24/7, 365 job for at least 10 years. And there is no weekend breaks.
Today, I am joined by Sascha, the man behind GetMyBoat, the world's largest boat rental place that's scaled to millions of users worldwide. In this conversation, he dives deep into his entrepreneurial journey and how he managed to scale a business in a two-sided market, how he was able to handle trust at scale, how he was able to combat COVID times, and grew what people now like to call the Airbnb of boats. So if you're an entrepreneur that is building anything right now, this right here is pure gold.
Cool. So thank you so much, Sascha, for being here today. I did a little bit of research at the beginning before I reached out to you, not kind of knowing the extent of, the experience that you have. And here we are today. And I just want to take 30 minutes of your time. Obviously, I've been an entrepreneur myself for the past 6 years, so I'm in the course of kind of like wanting to dive a lot deeper and learn from people like yourself and what they're doing. So let's just go straight into it. I don't know how long it's been since you've done something like this, but for people who don't know, what's your story in 60 seconds?
Sure. Well, Sebastian, it's nice to be with you. I love being with fellow entrepreneurs. And so let's start there. Let's start with the kind of professional side of my journey in less than 60 seconds or 30 seconds. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've actually started and or been the first employee at a company and two others with a co-founder, and have been very fortunate through a lot of hard work and some luck to have 3 exits as well. So I've had an IPO, I've sold to a private equity firm, and most recently in 2022, sold GetMyBoat, my last tech startup and marketplace, to Yanmar, which was a strategic acquisition, and just finished a couple months ago my requirement as CEO there. And so in addition to that, I'm a angel investor and seed investor, primarily in tech companies, mentor. I do some speaking. And then very quickly on the personal side, I actually grew up in a very small town in Northern California that's known for the locals ripping off the signs because they don't want anyone to know about the town. I'm 3 boys who are teenagers and in my time have any like road biking. There you go in 2 seconds. Sure.
So
Okay.
you mentioned, and the reason obviously when I reached out to you, the kind of the business that I was looking into mainly was Get My Boat. And obviously you mentioned
Yes.
that you just kind of done an exit and you just finished your tenure as like CEO there. So how did that idea come about? Because that's like a very interesting idea. I speak to a lot of brand owners and business owners on a daily basis, and I don't really come across this with something like that. So how did that idea come about?
Sure. It's to me and my business partner, co-founder, who provide capital for Get My Boat. Let me take you back first to about 2012 when this idea started to become a reality. This was really the rise of Uber and Airbnb, and underutilized assets were being used, and people were monetizing things like spare rooms or their house, their cars. And so we happened to be on a trip. He's an avid boater. We were down in the Caribbean. Our other business was getting a little mature. Had 1,000 employees, and we were looking for our next venture. And we just looked in marinas, and I'm sure this is true where you are as well. Any marina you look in is 100% full all the time. And so we thought, boats, why not? They're expensive assets, and it turns out they're only used about 8% of the year. So it seemed like a no-brainer with the rise of the sharing economy, that this was an asset to monetize.
Okay, nice, interesting. So taking it back to the day in 20, do you think you said 2013, 2012?
Yeah, 2012, 2013. Yeah.
So then you looked at the boats. There was like, an inundation of boats in the marina and stuff like that. How did you then kind of like make it click and think, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to start my next venture?
So I think the difference, I'm sure this is true in your journey too. The difference from most entrepreneurs of being successful and those that perhaps are less successful is execution and operations. So it's one of those things that if you have an idea and you're passionate about it or think that it's going to work or believe that there's a hole in the market, you can provide a better service, a better product, you just start doing it. And so it starts with research. It starts with market research. It starts looking to see if this is something that's actually doable. And again, it's just something that you start doing on a daily basis. And from there, you start building a MVP and a product and a marketplace, and away you go.
And I didn't do a bit of my extensive research. Now, I don't know to what extent of it is actually true, but what I did see is that during the pandemic, you guys had like a massive surge in just in revenue. And so what was your kind of like first oh wow moment that made you actually think like this is actually going to work and we should like double down or triple down on this?
So those are two questions in there because I want to address the pandemic component of that because I need to give you some context for people that are watching this or other entrepreneurs because it sounds great, right? The pandemic hit and our revenue went up 10x. Great,
Yeah.
simple, done. Then we sold to a strategic, right? The reality was much grimmer. So if I take you back to March of 2020, when the world was starting to close down, and we started seeing our sales come down, come down, come down. And then at the end of March, everyone canceled everything. And so we literally had no business at the end of March, early April of 2020 during that period. And so it was one of those situations where I was on with the executive team, on with the finance guys, looking, could we afford to keep our employees? We had no business, no revenue was coming in, no sale, no interest. And so every week, multiple times a week, we were redoing cash flow forecasts. Can we afford to keep people on? We absolutely said it's essential. We had a small team that we wanted to keep everybody employed at the company. It was a um, very critical time for people. Most people were losing their jobs. And we were very fortunate that boating happened to be a pandemic friendly activity. What I mean by that is most people are within 50 miles driving distance of some body of water with some type of watercraft. It's outside. They didn't have to wear masks. It's social distancing that you can do it in groups of 2, 3 to 12. So it met all the criteria that at the time people felt it was outside that people felt was acceptable. And from there, starting towards the end of April and May, we started to see um,
That was
sales accelerate. And then it just took off like a rocket. And we were holding on by the seat of our pants for most of the summer of 2020, just trying to keep everything together because the growth was so fantastic. But to your question, did we know it was going to work in 2012, 2013, 2014? There's no one moment that we were crazy. We knew it was going to work. I think any entrepreneur has to have some crazy in them that they think it's going to work and has some illusions of grandeur. But it really was in the early days, we started when we were contacting owners and there was interest in this potential marketplace for consolidation and be listing on our platform that we realized that we had something special on our hands.
nice, awesome. So from what you just said, I think I have two questions.
Sure.
One's a little bit more professional, one's a little bit more like on the unprofessional side. So first one is what would you say for someone that, because I've never actually even, I've been on like a ferry, right? But I've never actually been on like a boating trip or anything like that. So what would you say is the biggest misconception that most people have for someone that has never tried out, for example, Get My Boat? Like,
So before Get My Boat, I believe that boating was pretty inaccessible to most people, meaning you had to know somebody with a boat. You had to go to a hotel. Maybe you were at a resort and went there, but you didn't know very much about it and had no idea, and it seemed inaccessible to somebody. And I think what Get My Boat has done, and what we tried to do, is democratize the industry so that anybody anywhere in the world can try boating at whatever price point is comfortable for them. So whether we obviously see yachts, but it could be power boats, it could be fishing boats, but we try and make it accessible, just like Airbnb is accessible, Uber is accessible. That's what we've endeavored to do with a very simple to use app so that
Yeah.
anybody can try it very simply, and we handhold you through the process so that you don't have to worry that you've never been out in the water. So that's our view on boating.
Cool, cool. So that quite user friendly then. But what would you
Yes.
say? What would you say is the most unusual, memorable kind of like boat experience that you've seen booked through the platform? There must be some crazy ones.
Brilliant. So I've sent you a couple pictures, and I would love to pull up the first picture of Washington crossing the Delaware. Here in the United States, probably in England too, this is an indelible image of Washington crossing the Delaware. It was an important point of the Revolution. I don't mean to bring up any politics or old politics between England and America at this point. I know it's a point of contention, but this picture hope shows Washington crossing the Delaware. And so the most interesting recent experience were some young women. So hopefully you can pull up the next picture. They wanted to reenact, this is a bachelorette party, and they
Right.
wanted to reenact Washington crossing the Delaware during their bachelorette party. So that's what they did. And I think this points to a bigger lesson about the platform and the experiences, is that you can do anything with Get My Boat. You can make, what's wonderful about this is you can do anything that you want and make it any type of experience that you want. It's up to your imagination. And we love to say that every time you go out on a boat, it's a different experience. And most certainly these pictures point to that.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, I imagine you must have seen some crazy stuff. But so how did you then get out? Did they send you the picture, or how did you
Yes.
get out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the aspects that's wonderful of the platform is again, coming to the democratization of boating. We realize there's not a lot of photos and reviews of boating
Right. Right.
experiences. And so we offer our renters the opportunity with their review to add some real world photos. And people have responded to that. They love to share the experiences that they've had. And sometimes, frankly, it's some experiences that are a little not suitable for young audiences. And so we have some filters and some people that when people get a little carried away and have a little too much fun, we make sure to take
I
care
can
of those folks.
imagine 81 boats. Yeah. Cool. So
Yes.
talking about the political side, no, I'm joking. So how many countries is Get My Boat in now? And did you?
We're in over 180 countries.
Oh, wow. Okay. And did you like always plan for it to be as global as it is now? Was it more like
We did, and so when we were hiring one of our first employees, and they were asking about our global plans. Again, this comes back to an entrepreneur being a little bit crazy and illusions of grandeur. They had the same reaction that you did, which was, "Oh wow."
yeah,
We had always planned to go global, and always have planned to want to have a boat in every harbor, everywhere all over the world. And so that was always the idea, and we're slowly making that happen.
that's crazy. Okay, cool. So now moving over a little bit to where I want to find out more about like the marketing side, and this is where I want to learn a lot more. Starting out, Get My Boat, and when you were starting out, what was the first thing you did to kind of get the word out? And is it the same thing? You kind of have a business plan on it for the marketing side for every business that you start, or is it very detailed and specific to that specific niche that you get into?
So we could spend an hour just on that very question alone.
Yeah,
I would say, and you're probably very familiar with this, it's really hard to break through the noise and clutter in today's world. You are being bombarded by messages everywhere from your phone, computer screen, browsers. I mean, you name it, email, right? So every potential channel. Um, we didn't have a lot of money to spend on marketing. in the early days. We really bootstrapped GetMyBoat. And so our focus was frankly on word of mouth through a good customer experience in the early days. And that was always the plan. We figured that this was an industry that most people didn't know much about. And so when they had a good experience, whether they were an owner or renter, that's something we could do. And my advice to young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs is that marketing is incredibly important. That's your job and role, and we leave it to the professionals. But having a good product, service, marketplace that is meeting a need ultimately, and every interaction that you have with that potential customer, whether it be by phone, by email, etc., is the most important in those early days. And then that spreads through word of mouth. And conversely, if they are having a bad experience, that really gets spread through word of mouth. And so
Yeah.
that was really our goal in the early days.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm a big advocate of service first, in a sense of like, if you have an amazing product, people will come back, and I'm a massive advocate of retention. I think acquisition is just as important, or they're both just as important, but I focus more on the retention side when it comes to acquisition, because it's, to a certain extent, if you look at it with, like, even from the e-commerce side, it's essentially free money when you think about it, because you're always kind of paying to acquire a new customer. Retention for me is most important, so I do have a massive um focus when it comes to like the actual service that we provide. Our churn isn't as crazy as well, it's pretty much like we only churn like around 5% on a monthly basis, which is really good when you compare it to other like marketing companies. So I hear what you're saying, which is great. What would you say is
Yeah, look, I think that's wonderful. I think that's the right metric that you're looking at, is that once you bring somebody in, do you retain them? And then
yes,
obviously there's the full lifetime value of that customer, and it can be incredibly valuable. But it's so hard to get that first customer,
yeah.
and retaining them is, are you servicing them? Do you have a good product? Do you have a good service? And are you providing good customer service? So I couldn't emphasize that enough, and have emphasized it for 35 years of my professional career.
So yeah, so interesting, because I feel like as a CEO, I don't know if most CEOs feel that way, but I feel like recently I've been feeling as if I'm the biggest bottleneck in my own business. And the reason I say that is because I think when you start off as as a CEO, or depending on the type of personalities that you have, you kind of focus more on one specific kind of dimension of business. There's like company owners or agency owners that will just focus more on acquisition, and they don't care about the service or retention, as long as they're bringing in new clients and they're spending money on marketing. Um, and I think finding that balance for me has probably been the hardest thing. And the reason why I say that is because for me, even up until now, I would say retention for me is super easy. Like I get a client, and I would like to say, as someone that's very much like a people person, I will keep, it doesn't matter what, like we could have a bad month, but we're there. We're like constantly communicating, telling you what like expectations, what's going on, reporting and everything. But I think my biggest downfall has been, which is quite ironic, which has been kind of like advertising myself, even though we're probably one of the best at advertising for other businesses. So that leads me to my next question. What would you say has been the most effective marketing channel for you guys? Or even like, I would like to know most recently. So most recently that you exited the company, what would you say was the most effective marketing channel for you guys?
Sure. I just want to pick up on what you said. So you said that you're the biggest bottleneck and holding back. I would argue then that's the biggest opportunity for the business. And so your business has a huge opportunity as you start working through that with it internally and figuring out how to navigate that. So you've got an incredible opportunity ahead of you, which is, great to hear. So the most effective marketing, I would give again advice. It changes. It's dynamic. And we are in a incredibly dynamic environment. So what worked yesterday isn't necessarily what's going to work tomorrow. And
Yeah.
so you have to have multiple strategies in place. So as an example, Facebook used to be an incredible way to reach people when the privacy issues were not as prevalent. And so that was an incredible channel for us. Google SEO back in the 2015 to 2020, 2021, there wasn't much competition from local businesses. So we could get our placement in Google SEO at the very, very top. And it was a very effective lead generator for people that were figuring out, hey, I've been on a ferry, but I've never been boating before. I want to go boating in Miami. And then we pop up as they're searching for that. But
Okay.
I would argue again with the rise of AI and everything else, and to anyone that's doing marketing, you have to do multiple channels and you need to be testing all of those channels to see what works. And if something is working this year, be prepared that that might switch up on you the next year. And that makes it very difficult, but it makes it more important to have a multi-channel strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Interesting. So you've answered my next question then, which is great because I was going to ask what marketing tip would you would you get into? But cool. Awesome. So I think I've had the favorable opportunity of having growth in the business like year on year, which is good. I think obviously that just based on what we've been saying, we've grown quite substantially. Our team has gone from about 4 people to about 13 people in the last year. Uh,
Congratulations. That's very hard to do.
Thank you. Yeah. And again, it comes down to like retention. Retention is a big thing for me. And like obviously up until now, we generated over $570 million for the brands that we work with. That's like I mentioned to you.
Fantastic.
That's the brands. That's not my revenue, unfortunately. I wish it was my revenue. But it's
No,
not.
hey, and no, that day at a time, year at
Yeah.
a time, that eventually will be your revenue. It's good that
Exactly.
you're doing well for clients.
And I think, yeah, I think one of what the things that I've learned this year has been hiring. Like hiring for the right team is probably one of like the most important things that you need to do. And we've gone from being what I started was basically I started a paid ads agency. So it was pretty much just like running ads during kind of like a period where you could run an ad, spend $1 and make like 10. And it was like the best thing ever for businesses. However, what I do enjoy about what's happening at the moment is I don't. Hopefully, you know quite a bit about like the Meta side and TikTok side in terms of running ads, but I feel pretty much that we're going back into the 1960s type of marketing again, which is you need really good creative for you to be able to actually get results on the advertising side. So we've gone from obviously doing just paid ads to actually understanding the customer journey of what are people doing post click. So when they do a click, you know, does your website convert well? Do your email flows that pick up on people?
The,
Um,
con- the conversion funnel.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of what we handle now, which is like I'm super excited in terms of where we are as a company and where we're going towards. Um, there are tough stuff. What would you say is like the toughest part of building a business or the business that like obviously that you had?
Well, I think you've identified hiring as one
Yeah.
aspect. And what's interesting about building companies, and it's taken me a long time and 3 companies or 4 companies to learn this, is that the people that are with you when you talked about 4 people at the startup phase, and you're talking about 13 people now, those people might not be the right people for you once you get to the 50 to 100 person phase, once you get to the 10 to 25 to $50 million in agency revenue.
Yeah.
And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, that because you want to be loyal, you want people to be with you. But the people that have those startup skills are not necessarily the ones that have the same skills once you become more professional and less scrappy and more mature. So that's what I would say with regards to that. And from my perspective, the hardest thing about building a business is that it's just relentless. It takes over 10 years to be an overnight success, was what I like to say. And during that 10-year process, it's a relentless focus on execution and operations and details and fixing mistakes. And it is a 24/7, 365 job for at least 10 years. And there is no weekend breaks. I always laugh during my startup days. There's no Friday afternoon where you're clocking out. And so I think that's something in the harder part of entrepreneurship that is not highlighted as much, particularly in the media. They highlight the exits and the successes, but the grind and the grit and the resolve that it takes to get there are not as frequently mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So what's a mistake that you would say that you made earlier on that actually taught you something valuable?
So, as you know, there's no manual like these are the mistakes you will make manual. I would love to hold up a book, right? Like, oh, if I just read these mistakes, right? These 100 mistakes, I can avoid them. Mistakes are inevitable. There's no one big mistake. You're making 100 mistakes a week or a month. And that is inevitable. If you are doing something new and breaking glass or building something, you're going to make mistakes. And so there's no one thing that we did wrong. We did many things wrong. And so the lesson from that and the advantage of a startup is that you can recover quickly. You can correct those mistakes fast, and moving fast and making sure that you fix what was broken once you figure out it's broken, and you need mechanisms to figure that out. A/B testing that I'm sure you do in the tech space, knowing that something is wrong, workflows that are wrong, wording of messaging that is wrong, recovering quickly from those mistakes that you're inevitably going to make. Hiring, you mentioned hiring. If you hire the wrong person, get rid of them. And do it quickly before they infect the team and the culture. And so moving quickly is really to address these mistakes is the antidote to that.
Okay, interesting. So, and we're at a stage where we're working with some of the biggest brands and some of the biggest businesses in the world right now, which we're very fortunate. Obviously, most of the acquisition that we do is based on word of mouth and referrals, because I would like to say, we're really good at what we do. Um, if what would be like a if you were to start again tomorrow, so that was my question, but I think right now I want to rephrase it to the point where, let's say right now you're at your point where I am. What would be kind of like your next steps, or what would you kind of do differently at the stage where we are right now, which is, 7 figures a year, which is great. So, but yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, what
So,
would you?
there's two answers to your question. Let me answer the question, what would I have done differently? And I never do Monday morning quarterbacking. It is so tough to get to a 7-figure journey like where you are right now. And so you're giving that success, which is great and metric, but you're not going through the last 6 years of pain that you've been through to get
Yes.
to that stage. And so it's kind of the same as climbing Everest. If you knew how hard it was to climb Everest, you wouldn't do it again, or most people wouldn't do it again. I've done it 3 times, and I think I'm a little mad for doing that. But when it comes to, I think you're at an inevitable stage right now, which is a lot of the hard work has been done. As you've pointed out, word of mouth is spreading. You've got a good reputation in the marketplace. You've got high retention. You've hired up to 13 people. You've got 7 figures. You have got a great platform to get to the next level. And so I think the question is for you to sit down with people that are advisors or people that you trust, to sit down and say, what do we want the next 4 or 5 years to look like? Where do we want our path to go? And how are we going to achieve it? And how are we going to get there? And so using that today where you're at and looking at where you want to be in those 4 or 5 years. Do you want to exit? Do you want to sell the business? Do you want to give it to your kids? Do you want to give it to a partner? Do you have no idea and just want to continue the success? Answering those questions today is going to help you achieve that goal down the road.
Nice, interesting. I feel like it really resonates with what I was kind of like focusing on today, which was like looking at what I want in a year. You mentioned 4 to 5 years, but I was in a year, which is really cool. Okay.
Do both. Do
Yeah,
both. So ultimately, where do you want the business to go, and work backwards, and then do it in 1-year increments.
cool. Awesome. But let's get, because I don't know, like, I really enjoyed this conversation, by the way. I know I
So
know
have
that
I. Thank you.
you only had 30 minutes or no, but I'm gonna get to like the last kind of like quick fire question. So
Yep.
I think the first one that I wanted to get with through is, how do you feel after an exit?
Elated
Right. Okay. Because and the
and
reason why.
exhausted.
So go ahead.
Elated and exhausted. It is, as you will discover, it is really hard to get liquidity, and it is really hard to sell your business and have a successful exit.
What do you mean by that? In what sense?
I think we read the headlines of businesses that had gone public or been sold to private equity or strategics or financial sponsors, What you don't see are the 99% that haven't made it and don't have liquidity, and the people that are toiling in the mines. What you don't see are the founders that are down to 1% of their ownership because they've taken in so much capital at terms that at various points of the business that required them to give up significant shares of their hard work. So each time I've been fortunate enough to have an exit, it's a big relief that I'm going to be more financially secure and that somebody has recognized the value financially of what we've done.
Nice. Okay. Thoughts on AI?
It's another podcast.
Okay, cool. Cool. Last ones then, a bit more fun and personal. If you could take the boat, because obviously you just recently exited Get My Boat. If you could take the boat anywhere in the world out for a day, where would you go?
So that's like asking which one of your children is your favorite. And so I,
I'm
I,
shaking that. I'm just kidding.
I definitely am going to answer this the politically correct way, which is, look, every single time you go out on a boat, it's a unique experience. Sunrise, sunset, yacht,
Yeah.
fishing, with friends, with family, potentially engagement, bachelorette party, good times. Each experience is different and each experience is wonderful anywhere in the world in its own way.
Nice. And I think let's finish off with this last one, which is out of absolutely everything that you've done in the business world and I imagine in your personal life, what's on your bucket list that you haven't done yet? If you do have a bucket list.
I feel very fortunate that I've been living my bucket list. I've worked for the NBA, worked for an ice cream company in Japan. I've lived in London. I've lived in Paris, New York, Boston, all over the world. I've done all different types of crazy things. I've biked in a Tour de France type thing this summer behind the scenes. I feel very fortunate. I would encourage to people to live their life to their fullest, and that there's no end to the road, and that's part of the entrepreneur journey. There's no end of the road per se, and so as you're on that road to enjoy everything that you can, while you can is something to do. And so I've been very blessed and fortunate that I don't have a list. I just kind of live my life as things come.
Nice. Amazing, Sasha. I've really enjoyed speaking to you and just finding out more about stuff. And I think doing my extensive research just before made everything a bit more fun. And yeah, you seem like a down to earth guy, which is great. So I appreciate you jumping on the call. And I will have a few more questions post when I hit the stop button anyway. So we can get into that.
Okay, very
But
good. Anytime.
good,
Thank-
myself.
Okay.